It is good that you are here to record this picture of me. With faith, courage, and a just cause, David will still beat Goliath.
On the night of August 26, 1975, the Jubilee Palace in Addis Ababa were cloaked in an unsettling silence. Colonel Mengistu Haile Mariam, the shadowy figure who had risen to power within Ethiopia's military junta, was seen pacing outside the emperor's chambers, their intentions unmistakable. Inside, Emperor Haile Selassie lay in his bed, unaware that this would be his final night alive. The next morning, his loyal butler, Ashatu Tefamariam, entered the room to serve breakfast. What he found would haunt him forever. The emperor's body lay motionless, his face darkened to a bluish hue. The air reeked of ether, and his pillow was suspiciously placed beside his head, not under it. The official story claimed he had died of natural causes, but whispers of suffocation and foul play spread like wildfire. Decades later, confessions from those involved would confirm the truth. Haile Selassie had been murdered. But why? And how did the man who once commanded global respect and admiration meet such a tragic end? To uncover the truth, we must unravel the web of betrayal, revolution, and international intrigue that led to this fateful moment. During the 1950s and 60s, Haile Selassie was a masterful diplomat who skillfully navigated Ethiopia's reliance on foreign aid, particularly from the United States, which viewed Ethiopia as a crucial ally against Soviet expansion in Africa. However, Selassie refused to depend on a single superpower. In 1959, he arrived in Moscow with a bold mission and secured a landmark agreement with Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev, who pledged $100 million in development aid, equivalent to nearly $1 billion today, providing Ethiopia with a vital boost to modernize while preserving its independence amid Cold War tensions. Shortly after, Selassie traveled to Beijing and gained further support from Chinese Premier Zhou Enlai, effectively playing the Cold War rivals against each other. This strategy pressured the United States to increase its aid to Ethiopia, contributing over $211 million between 1950 and 1970, about $2.4 billion in today's money. Selassie's ability to present Ethiopia as a pivotal African nation, deserving of Western support, was unmatched. He positioned himself as a symbol of African independence and unity, even as he quietly maintained alliances with rival powers. While Selassie was winning this diplomatic chess game abroad, his frequent absences created a power vacuum at home. Eritrea, once an Italian colony and then a British protectorate, was federated with Ethiopia in 1952 under a United Nations mandate. The arrangement was supposed to guarantee Eritrea limited autonomy, its own parliament, and cultural rights. But from the start, Emperor Haile Selassie saw the federation as a temporary obstacle to his vision of a unified Ethiopian empire with access to the Red Sea. Selassie's government quickly began dismantling Eritrean autonomy. Amharic replaced Tigrinya and Arabic as official languages. Eritrean political parties were banned, and economic assets were shifted to Ethiopia proper. The Eritrean flag was replaced with Ethiopia's, and censorship and repression became the norm. When Eritrean students and workers protested, Selassie responded with force, sending in imperial police and military units to crush dissent. By 1962, Selassie unilaterally dissolved the federation, annexed Eritrea as Ethiopia's 14th province, and shut down the Eritrean parliament. This act of annexation was the spark that ignited Africa's longest war for independence. On September 1, 1961, Hamid Idris Awate, a former Italian colonial soldier and a name still revered in Eritrea, fired the first shots of armed resistance at Adal, marking the birth of the Eritrean Liberation Front. The ALF, initially dominated by Muslim lowlanders like Awate and Osman Saleh Sabe, soon drew in Christian highlanders, including future leaders like Isaias Afewerki. The movement fractured along ethnic and ideological lines, leading to the formation of the Eritrean People's Liberation Front, EPLF, in the 1970s, with Isaias Afewerki and Ramadan Mohamed Noor at the helm. What many don't know is that the early years of the war were marked by brutal counterinsurgency campaigns. Ethiopian forces, often unfamiliar with the local terrain and people, resorted to collective punishment, burning villages, destroying crops, and executing suspected sympathizers. In one of the most horrific but little-known incidents, the village of Basic Dera was locked inside its mosque and set ablaze by Ethiopian troops in 1970, with survivors shot as they tried to escape. Similar massacres occurred in Shayeb, Hergigo, Elabarid, and Hajar, targeting both Muslim and Christian communities. The human cost was staggering. Over the course of the 30-year conflict, an estimated 65,000 to 70,000 Eritrean fighters and 195,000 Ethiopian soldiers were killed. Civilian casualties were even higher. 150,000 to 280,000 Eritrean civilians lost their lives, and more than 440,000 were displaced, nearly a fifth of the entire population. The war devastated Eritrea's economy, destroyed its infrastructure, and left tens of thousands permanently disabled or orphaned. In the early 1970s, Ethiopia faced a catastrophic famine in the northern provinces of Tigray and Wollo. Hundreds of thousands of people were starving, and refugees flooded into the capital seeking relief. Famine in Ethiopia happened because of several serious problems. One big cause was a long drought, but the situation got worse because the government didn't act quickly or effectively. They didn't have a good system to warn people early or send help in time. Another reason was the unfair social and economic system. Many people didn't own the land they worked on, so when trouble came, they had no support or safety. These problems together made some communities suffer much more than others. By the time Selassie visited the famine-stricken regions, the damage was done. Public trust in his leadership had eroded, and whispers of revolution began to spread. But the famine wasn't the only issue threatening Selassie's reign. A shadowy group was emerging within the military, and their actions would soon change Ethiopia forever. For decades, the alliance between Ethiopia and the United States was cemented by the presence of Kagnu Station, a massive U.S. intelligence and communications hub located in Asmara, Eritrea. Established during World War II, this sprawling facility covered 14 square kilometers and served as a critical listening post for monitoring communications across the Red Sea region during the Cold War. The station wasn't just a military asset, it was a financial lifeline for Ethiopia. The United States paid Ethiopia $5 million annually in rent for the base, which, adjusted for inflation, is equivalent to over $40 million per year today. This steady income formed the backbone of American military aid to Ethiopia, which totaled $211 million between 1950 and 1970, worth approximately $2.4 billion in today's money. However, by the early 1970s, advancements in satellite technology rendered Kagnu Station obsolete. In 1973, the United States announced it would shut down the facility by the end of 1974, marking the beginning of a significant shift in U.S.-Ethiopia relations. The closure of Kagnu Station dealt a severe blow to Ethiopia's economy and its strategic importance to Washington. To make matters worse, the U.S. began scaling back its military aid, reducing annual assistance from $12 million to $10.8 million, a cut that further strained the already fragile relationship. Desperate to secure international support, Emperor Haile Selassie turned to the Soviet Union. In the autumn of 1973, he traveled to Moscow, hoping to persuade the Kremlin to stop arming Somalia, Ethiopia's rival in the Ogaden region. But the Soviets, unwilling to jeopardize their relationship with Somalia, gave Selassie a lukewarm reception and ignored his pleas. The loss of Kagnu Station, combined with Ethiopia's growing isolation on the global stage, left Selassie's regime vulnerable at a time when internal unrest was reaching a boiling point. As Ethiopia entered the 1970s, few outside the country realized just how fragile the imperial regime had become. Beneath the surface, the Ethiopian military was simmering with discontent, fueled by poor pay, lack of advancement, and the glaring contrast between the emperor's opulent lifestyle and the suffering of ordinary citizens. The Derg, a clandestine committee of junior officers, began meeting in secret, initially dismissed by Selassie's own intelligence services as inconsequential. But these officers, led by the ambitious and calculating Major Mengistu Haile Mariam, were quietly building a network that would soon shake the foundations of Ethiopian society. What most people don't know is that the Derg's rise was not just a product of internal unrest, but also the result of years of subtle Soviet influence. While the United States had been Ethiopia's main backer, the Soviets had been quietly investing in Ethiopia's future through scholarships, military training, and ideological outreach. Soviet advisors already present in Addis Ababa, under the guise of technical assistance, began to identify and mentor promising leftist officers. In 1974, the Derg struck. Taking advantage of national unrest and rising anger over famine and corruption, the military seized control. Haile Selassie was deposed and placed under house arrest. The Soviets, sensing opportunity, pivoted quickly. They supplied the new regime with weapons, advisors, and ideological training, seeing Ethiopia as a key piece in the broader Cold War chessboard. Then, in August 1975, the revolution turned darker. On August 27th, Haile Selassie died under mysterious circumstances while confined in the Imperial Palace. The Derg claimed he had died of natural causes, but evidence and later testimony suggested otherwise. He was likely murdered on Mengistu's orders. Fearing his grave might become a site of royalist resistance, Derg officials buried his body in secret, reportedly beneath a toilet or within the palace compound. Mengistu soon solidified his power with brutal efficiency. In February 1977, during a supposed reconciliation meeting, he shocked the Derg council by pulling out a pistol and executing his rival, Major Atnafu Abate, in cold blood. The message was clear: there would be no shared leadership. From that point forward, the revolution would be ruled through fear. The Soviets, who had initially hoped for a more collective leadership, quickly shifted their support to Mengistu, recognizing his willingness to impose order at any cost. International solidarity soon followed. East Germany's Stasi helped build Ethiopia's feared security services. Cuba, under Fidel Castro, sent thousands of troops to aid Ethiopia during the Ogaden War against Somalia. In a secret 1977 meeting in South Yemen, Mengistu, Castro, and leaders from South Yemen and Somalia discussed forming a Horn of Africa Socialist Union. The plan collapsed due to Somali ambitions, but the Soviet bloc had made its investment clear. Ethiopia would be the new socialist anchor in East Africa. But why did the Soviets and their allies want Selassie to fall? The answer lies in both ideology and geopolitics. Selassie, despite his modernizing image abroad, was seen by Marxist states as a feudal relic, a symbol of monarchy, Western alignment, and resistance to socialist revolution. The Soviets viewed Ethiopia as the key to expanding their influence in Africa, especially after losing Egypt to the West. By supporting the Derg, they could install a loyal Marxist regime in a strategically vital region, gain access to the Red Sea, and counter American interests. For Cuba and East Germany, Ethiopia became a showcase for international socialist solidarity, a place to prove that revolution could succeed even in the heart of Africa. Yet, Haile Selassie's shadow never fully disappeared. After the Derg's fall in 1991, a new transitional government opened investigations into the regime's crimes. In February 1992, a search was conducted in the former palace. On February 17th, a shallow grave was discovered beneath a concrete slab near the emperor's old office. The remains were confirmed to be Haile Selassie's. It wasn't until November 5th, 2000, after years of delay and political hesitation, that the late emperor was finally laid to rest in a grand state funeral at Holy Trinity Cathedral in Addis Ababa, alongside members of the imperial family. In the end, the Derg's rise was not just a revolution from within, but a carefully orchestrated shift in the global balance of power, one that would plunge Ethiopia into years of turmoil, but also reshape the destiny of the Horn of Africa. Haile Selassie's life was marked by ambition, resilience, and eventual downfall. He skillfully placed Ethiopia on the world stage during the Cold War, but at home, growing unrest, famine, and rebellion weakened his rule. To the Rastafarians, he is a divine figure. To Africans, a symbol of unity and independence. But to many Ethiopians, his legacy is more complex, a reminder of what happens when a leader loses touch with his people.